Umar al-Khattab, did he build Bayt al-Maqdis? Did he build the temple? No.
Can we get back to his criteria about the Messiah being?
Have you even read what it says on Kabbalah al-Sakra? It literally praises though. You came over saying you were going to you're learning Hebrew so you could take Jewish sex slaves.
Yeah, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that?
Tell the camera.
Sabaya basically,
It's a Jewish, a female slave that you would capture in war.
Prostitution, what's prostitution? And every time, and in every
You're going to defend this talk? You're talking about enslaving women and the woman's defending him?
Every day.
Astaghfirullah.
Are you implying slavery?
Actually, in Judaism and Islam, you have a concept of like, here we call it like an Eved Hashem, a servant or a slave to Hashem. And Islam, you have Abdullah, which is the same concept. In Christianity, you have that same concept of being a servant or a slave.
I don't know. Like, we're just talking about stuff. Like we see how it goes.
Yeah, you can hold it. You do the interview in this Christian channel. Otherwise, I'll be sneakily talking into them, whispering Jewish prayers on them.
Okay, right. So
What are we talking about?
right. So the thing that, do you want to say it again?
Which part? Like what we're saying over there? It was just an interesting question because somebody made a snide comment to the Christian brother that he was serving his master, meaning the Jewish people. And I asked in Judaism and in Islam, we have a concept called an Eved Hashem or Abdullah, a servant or Vadia, a servant of the Creator, a slave to the Creator. There's this concept which is in both the traditions. And I asked in Christianity, is there a similar concept?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Because the Apostle Paul refers to himself as.
This is interesting. I like all the other words in Hebrew. This is good to know.
Yeah.
When you say that, I did have a week years ago in 1997 where I actually celebrated Passover, and there was a Jewish family, Christian, Muslim, and Hindu, and we celebrated Passover the whole week. And for me, oh my God, I've landed. This is my world. We were all together. I lost contact with Alana and Aviva. What was interesting, they were half Welsh and half Iraqi Jews. Wow, amazing. So it's always interesting to hear people speak from different religions.
How did they end it? Did they end the meal by saying next year in Jerusalem? They will have done. They will have done.
That was in 1997.
Yeah, no, but we're not back in Jerusalem, so we end every set of next year in Jerusalem.
This is an experience I always talk about, and I remember having the I think it's the matzah or the thin bread, and I put the radish on, eating it like ketchup. Being from Lancashire, you put a lot on, so I took a bite of it. It nearly blew my head off. Like a horseradish, and then she did the ritual washing of the hands, reading something from the book, and I think we had vegetarian food for some reason. We cooked together, everything was separate.
I can bring it back based on what you're saying. Something which is a little more spicy, a little more kharif.
Oh my God! I never had that again. So that was my experience. But so I like hearing the words of Hebrew.
I like being sincere when I talk to Christians. I love Christians like my brothers. I genuinely do. I have one group of Christians who I am like fiercely opposed to, and that's the Christians that use deception to try and convert Jews from Judaism. And so you mentioned there the Passover, so I'll give you a good example. Are you aware of Christians appropriating Jewish traditions and saying, like, for instance, in Ashkenazi matzahs that they cook, they are pierced so that the bread doesn't rise. And it's only in Ashkenazi. So if you go to the Middle East, it's more of a flat bread with no piercing. But Jews for Jesus,
yes, that's the one.
They came along and they said, actually, the piercing of the matzah has got nothing to do with it rising or anything. It's because they pierced Jesus when he was on the cross. And so that's an example of the appropriation.
There's other examples. Why are there three matzahs?
Sorry?
What?
Why are there three matzot? On the Seder plate, there's three matzahs.
Okay.
Why are there three?
I don't know.
From a Christian point of view, what would you get?
Is it Trinity?
Right. Why is the middle one broken? And hidden away and comes back at the end.
Well, I see where you're going.
Yeah.
No, but Christians, Jews for Jesus,
I'm sure there are some that do.
make this argument. Go on, Chris.
And so just to be very clear, very clear. I think there is Jews aren't interested in going and taking Christians away from their faith. We're very happy with Christians being Christian. What we object to is when people hijack our faith in the ways that's been displayed, given as an example, to try and take Jews away from our faith. And so one of the things that comes up in a lot of these conversations is, why are these conversations so civil? And it's because none of us are
Can we have
a debate as to why do you believe or think or feel that Christianity has hijacked Judaism?
Okay, I can very
No, but let's just have a conversation
So
about it.
I don't believe he's hijacked Judaism. I don't believe you've hijacked Judaism. No, so I don't believe Christians have hijacked Judaism. Guys, one conversation at a time for the camera. So I don't believe that Christians have hijacked Judaism at all. I believe Christians who pose as Jews to convert Jews. I'll give you an example. There's someone who was outed as a rabbi in Israel who was born as a non-Jewish, and he became a pastor. Then they changed their name to a Jewish name and moved to Israel and started trying to deceptively convert Jews. And that's abhorrent. Yeah,
absolutely condemn that. Any deception that is used to coerce people into converting, I think is wrong. Absolutely.
And so that's my thing. I've got, like, when our conversations I learn, and I actually, it either throws questions on my faith or strengthens my faith, because you pose questions and I have to go away and I have to research them, like, do I have a strong answer to this, yes or no? And I think that's beautiful. I think it's beautiful that we can
every time you do that, you get like 10% more towards Christianity. Yeah, absolutely.
And he gets 30% more closer to being a Ben Noah.
Well, so I'll become a Jew, you become a Christian. But I mean, I think we can all sort of unite over that view that deception is not the appropriate way to go about proselytizing at all. I think we can completely agree on that. I have seen, to be honest with you, the only cases of this I'm familiar with is the Islamic side of things, where they get Muslims that make them look Jewish, and which when I found, I thought I think you were the one
outing these guys all the time,
and I found it so odd, it's so weird, and it's always kind of obvious. I think actually you said that. I think I'm actually quoting you to you. Yeah. Apologies for that. But there was a video you made where it was like. They made a fake missionary thing or something, and they had the word missionary in it, and you were like, well, that's very odd for a Jewish thing, because they don't typically see it that way. And it's like, I thought that was hilarious.
No, that guy was, I think he's called Rabbi Mort. He's definitely not a rabbi, an Iranian Muslim who converted to Islam, but he posed as a Jew for a long time. But he actually posed as a Jew for Jesus for a long time, but the guy was never Jewish. So he was trying to take Christians and Jews with him to Islam. I don't think he was successful in taking one person from their faith. But no, I think deception is wrong. I think debate is good. And there have been many Christians who've converted to Judaism, and many Jews have converted to Christianity through conversations like this. But I think conversation is healthy.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I think our traditions are very similar. Well, at least in the West. I think there's probably variations of things, like, there are variations with us as well. But generally in the West, anyone who was born or has a tradition going back in the West will have probably picked up principles of the Enlightenment. Now, I don't necessarily agree with all the Enlightenment. There are things that I will critique about it. But fundamentally speaking, the idea that we can be together, we could probably chat and go for a drink or something. You do drink? Do you drink?
We're allowed to drink.
My other Jewish friend did drink, so I was like, assuming it's the same.
It is in Psalms, wine gladdens the heart.
Yes. I was going to say, like, I'm pretty sure biblically this is right.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. So that's cool.
We're not supposed to get drunk. We're not supposed to go out on a Saturday night, drinking 10 pints of beer, getting into a fight.
It's like that. What the New Testament says.
Exactly. Well, Jesus made a lot of wine, so I mean, it wouldn't have been very
this is
consistent if he made the wine and never had the wine.
One of the things that confuses me with Islam is that Jannah, there's rivers of wine.
Yes.
But you're not allowed to drink in the dunya.
There are different perspectives here. I've had Muslims say there was. One second. There are Muslims that will say. It's not alcoholic wine. It's non-alcoholic wine.
It's grape juice.
Another one, which is.
I mean, technically, we actually do. We can use grape juice. We're supposed to sanctify the Sabbath and the festivals by drinking a glass of wine, and you're allowed to drink grape juice. It doesn't have to be alcoholic. As long as it comes from grape and is kosher, you can sanctify the Sabbath with it.
Okay. What makes it kosher?
That it's basically that it's been produced by a Jew and guarded the entire process, so that it's only really been handled by Jews, because wine historically was used in idolatrous services, and we can't use wine that's been used in idolatry or for idolatry. Therefore, if you're sanctifying a festival with it, it has to be you have to be sure that it's pure wine.
Oh, is that the same for the meat as well?
Not for the meat, only for the wine. With meat, it's not an issue, because
Don't you guys culture?
But what I could say is, when you're reading the Old Testament, it says that you can't cook a baby goat in its mother's milk, and it's always talking about the festivals. So it's when you're having a festivals, and then it'll go on to say, by the way, you also can't cook a goat in its mother's milk, a baby goat. And from that, we're commanded not to drink. We extrapolate out that you can't eat milk and meat together. And one of our greatest rabbis, Maimonides, says, I don't have evidence for this, but I suspect that there was idolatrous practices at the time of Moses where they would have pagan festivals and they would cook a baby goat in its mother's milk, and therefore we should not do that so that we're not like the idolaters. So much of Jewish practice is to separate us from idolaters, and we have found out that that was the case. There were pagan religions that would sacrifice.
Whilst Moses was up in Mount Sinai receiving the law, by the time he got down, they'd already made a calf of worshipping the calf.
Can I ask you something? Just a question that I've always sort of wondered, and it's kind of like me putting myself in an Orthodox Jewish person's shoes. I always thought that. Actually, let's start off with some things. Do you think that in history, there was a point in which a lot of Jewish people converted to Christianity?
Well, yeah.
I guess I have to start off with that. I guess I'm wondering
because the whole New Testament was spread across the world.
Well, exactly, right? I mean, it would seem historically.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Do you think it was primarily what led to the decline of the Jewish population? I guess I don't know. Given that you reject that, I'm wondering how to word it now.
So the children of Israel were scattered abroad during the time.
Right. So you're saying that one of the reasons that because at the time the Jewish religion was actually quite a well set religion that formed a decent amount, at least, of the population in Israel, right? Yeah.
So in Israel, what basically happened was that at the time, the period we're discussing, there were multiple ethnic groups living in the land. The Jews were only one of them. Like for the history, you had Idumeans, you had Arabs, you had Greeks, you had all different populations living there, and many of whom were pagan. And what we found was in the land, it was the pagans that tended to embrace Christianity, and the Jews remained true to Judaism. So in the early years, and this is not my area, so if I say something wrong in the comments, please correct me, because I like to speak on subjects. I'm an authority. This is why I talk politics. I'm not an authority on history or of religion or on religion itself. I'm a lay Jew, a simple Jew. But my understanding is that with Christianity, for the first 200 years or so, it was very small, and there were Jews that were involved, but it was a small subset of Jews. It wasn't the majority of Jews. Christianity really started to explode when it was embraced by non-Jews, and the Jewish people retained, and that's that led to the hostility between the church and the Jews, is because the Jews remained steadfast. They refused to apostate. Now there were periods where we came under persecution, like the Inquisition and stuff, where Jews were forced to convert to Catholicism, a threat of death. And many Jews will have apostated from their faith then. Many of them kept their faith in secret. In fact, the Jewish community that settled here in the 1500s, they were Jews who pretended they were Catholic but kept their faith in secret. They'd have secret prayer rooms in their houses. They would secretly light candles on Friday. But the majority of Jews have remained Jewish, and that's why we're Jewish to this day.
I think you've jumped.
I don't know.
You've jumped through history a lot now. I
Yeah.
think he's been specific about during the time of the Roman.
Yeah, because it seems.
So to his point, at the time of the Islamic conquest, there were around 400,000 Jews. So this is the Byzantine period, Byzantium.
Before the Ottomans.
So before the Ottomans, before the Muslims, before Umar al-Khattab came into Jerusalem, there were almost 500,000 Jews living in the land, and that's just in Israel. And that's after it was Christian and pagan. It had been pagan and Christian before this period, and there was still almost 500,000 Jews living there.
I guess my question really is, I'm just curious as to how big was the conversion from Jews in the early period to Christians? Because it seems, according to the Christian narrative in the New Testament, there were people who were Jewish becoming Christian, and that seemed to happen a fair bit. And I guess it's hard for us to know exactly how much that was, but it seems to me as if, in the way the history is played out, Christianity did explode, and you're right, Gentiles were... there's a lot more Gentiles than there were Jews, basically, right? So it spread among the Gentiles, and as well as the Jews, and it became a dominant religion. But as a Jew, I'd always be looking at it thinking, well, I would imagine that there was at least a substantial amount of Jews who converted in the initial period.
Okay, so what archaeological evidence is there for that? So we have
Just the New
like
Testament.
From that period, we have a huge amount of archaeology in Israel.
Well,
lots and lots of Jewish grave sites.
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
don't have any like. My understanding of early Christianity, there's very little evidence. You'd see the odd graffiti in Italy of like the fish and stuff, but there's like in the early period, there's very little like record of the early Christians.
There is
artifacts.
archaeological evidence of the early Christians.
I'm saying not a lot,
That's fine.
in comparison to how much there is.
Sure,
of
I'm not trying to say that like Jews just sort of vamoosed or something. Like, no, not at all. I think there was a continued Jewish. Well, we know there was because of the Jewish revolts in 70 AD.
Because Josephus actually
so we absolutely know that there was still a significant and substantial group, no question. I just wonder how much of the early Christian movement had an impact among the Jewish people, I guess. Because
what I would say is, outside of the New Testament, what evidence do you have of that?
Well, Josephus.
Josephus doesn't say there was a large conversion of people to Christianity.
I'm not even going to reference other material. Because I can kind of just reference the way history played out, in the sense that Christianity has its mark in Israel, even though you could say it's not dominant or it's not overwhelming, but rather it definitely had something. And the way history has played out, the majority of the world, in terms of religions, actually let me rephrase that, not the majority of people, but out of all of the religions, the people with the most adherence is Christianity, right?
Yeah.
From a factual point of view.
Yeah.
I mean,
but when you look at Orthodox Judaism, I haven't run the numbers to be honest with you, but I'm assuming it's generally quite small, like relatively speaking.
And it's for the reason we said it. Christianity evangelizes. It tries to convert people.
And
Judaism
because
we don't want you to be Jewish. We want you to be good people, but you don't have to be Jewish to be rewarded by the Creator.
but to sort of sum up his point, it does say in the New Testament that the Jews at that time were stopping the Christians from converting the Gentiles to Christianity.
Okay. Well, I would say definitely stopping Jews from converting to Christianity, because that's what Paul was doing, right?
Paul was converting a lot of Gentiles. So
No. I'm talking about Saul. I'm talking about for his conversion. He was sent supposedly.
He was stopping.
To stop. Right. So it seems.
But what I'm talking about, whilst when he became a Christian and he was converting people, the Jews at that time were stopping him from converting Gentiles to Christianity.
Okay.
And then what the point that Paul was making is that if the Jews are saying that this religion is not a religion, why are they then stopping him converting Gentiles to the religion? So that was the point that Paul was making at the time.
So I think I think the onus is really on you guys rather than us to demonstrate that there was any sizable conversion.
It kind of just leads up to the idea that there is something psychologically difficult. Like, for example, I have the privilege, in a sense, of being able to look at the world and say, okay, the majority of people who are religious are Christian. That makes sense given what Christ did, and I believe that's true, and I believe he actively wants to call people to him. So that's exactly what I would expect.
Just clarify in terms of what you mean by Christianity being religious people.
So people who follow the teachings of Christ, they're a disciple of Christ, right? Whether it's Orthodox, Protestant.
I'm religious.
No, I'm just talking about adherence. There are
more.
more Christians than there are Muslims, right, in the world. Right. Yeah. So, for me, I take comfort in that, perhaps psychologically.
Yeah.
Because it makes me think that God's plan seems to be coming out, and maybe this is guilty fallacious reasoning. I don't know. But it's definitely something that seems to comfort me. But I would then, therefore, imagine from an Orthodox Jewish perspective, perhaps it has the opposite effect of being kind of like, well, you know, this Jewish guy, Yeshua, he came and he said he was the Messiah that we were waiting for. A lot of the world's population were convinced by this. Well, not necessarily through direct contact, but perhaps just through late appearance and having children and things. But that, I don't know. What do you think about that?
So,
Does that?
Well, it does say that he had to be rejected by his own.
Okay.
So the Jewish answer is, and it's the same answer we give to Muslims. We'd call it a nes gadol. It's a great miracle. It's a great sign that the entire world has on the tip of their tongue the name of my great grandfather. It's incredible. We've got this little desert tribe who were living in the middle of nowhere, like tiny people, and the Creator blessed them, my ancestors, with prophets, and with many, many, many blessings. And as a consequence, two religions were born out of our original creed and took that message of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, of Hashem, the Creator, to the four corners of the world. And we see that as part of the divine plan, because it's preparing the world for the Messiah. Now, we may have a disagreement as to who the Messiah is, but it's from a Jewish perspective, we see it all part of the divine plan. That it's a miracle. Like, think of the Roman Empire's come and gone, the Greeks have come and mighty empires have gone, and yet this tiny little desert tribe, everybody knows our great-great-granddad. It's amazing.
To add to that, for eternity, everybody will be not only lauding that, but will be praising the name of Abraham for eternity. So what you're describing is on this earth, but in eternity, it's going to be magnified sevenfold. So how do you feel about that?
It's incredible. It's a nes gadol.
But as it is written in my book, which is the Bible, how would you feel when the Gentiles and the Jews are sitting in the bosom of Abraham, but you chose not to believe in Jesus Christ and you become a castaway? How would you feel about that? Seeing the Gentiles and the Jews, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Ruth, Solomon, David, all being lauded throughout eternity, and because you chose not to believe in Jesus Christ, you become a castaway.
I don't know if any of the audience have children, teenagers, and they start getting a little bit of knowledge, and they start giving their parents a little bit of sass. That's what you've done. You are children, Christians. Muslims, you are children. And it's nice that you get a little confident and you come back to us and tell us that we're burning in the hellfire because we don't believe what you believe. But what I would say is the only reason that you are able to read the Old Testament prophecies, the only reason is because my ancestors told you what those words mean. And they had understandings of those prophecies which disagree with yours. I'm not going to, it's not my interest to get into a debate with you as to whether Jesus is the Jewish Messiah. You think he is, we think he isn't. But what I will do is I kind of flip the question round on you. When you're in a setting where you have a teacher who's been versed in his subject for a long, long time, and then if his students come along and start challenging him and coming up with radical ideas that differ from what the teacher has been teaching, who would you be more likely to trust? The subject matter domain expert, and that's the Jewish rabbis, that's the sages, that's the rabbis who Jesus studied under, it's the rabbis who Paul studied under. Remember, Jesus and Paul would have both been students of the rabbis that we follow of the Mishnah. Gamliel, exactly, is what. And so I trust the teachers. They're literally what rabbi means. I trust our teachers. And I have tremendous respect for Christians, and I encourage Christians to pray to the Father. If we're praying to if the Father is the same Creator that I pray to, then Mazal Tov.
How about in the Spirit?
So, ask one quick question. What's the main objective of religion? Is it to promote laws of equity or to promote laws of fairness?
So
neither.
It's a complete
curveball.
So from a Jewish perspective, the purpose of religion is to.
Laws of communication.
It's to do with how we exist on this earth today, on Olam Hazeh. Like in an Islamic perspective, and I think in a Christian perspective, it's very much about the world to come, heaven. You do good deeds so that you're saved. You believe in Jesus so that you're saved. You do righteous deeds in Islam so that your focus isn't the dunya, your focus is to get to Jannah. In Judaism, the focus is we have a concept of Olam Haba, the world to come, but the focus is all the commandments are to make this world a better place. It's to help the widow, it's to help the orphan, and that's
creating social justice.
More than yes, for the sake of heaven.
And generally, to create social justice, we need to have laws of communication.
I mean, I don't like the word social justice because it's got so many negative connotations. But in a basic level, yeah.
We can take
That's generally what religion's for. Like beyond Christianity, beyond Muslim, beyond Judaism. That's what it's all about.
In all honesty, if someone asked me what the religion is for, I would say for truth. I wouldn't even because to say otherwise, I think is to not fully encompass all that it is. If you see what I mean.
And generally nowadays, we have a different religion, assertive manners.
But I think this is a slightly different conversation.
Yeah, I wanna get back to
so
what we
bring
were
it back, and then we can come back to the purpose of religion.
It's really
Yeah, we
about,
can talk about religion after that. Yeah, so
it's a history lesson here, yeah? If I'm correct.
Yeah, and it's not so much a history lesson;
to
it's how we
answer-
view each
to
other
answer that-
historically.
to answer
Well,
that,
That's what
right?
confuses the world.
Go on,
The
you
truth
go.
is laws of communication. Well, go on.
Yeah, so to come back on that, right? You're talking about how Jesus Christ studied under all these great rabbis. Yes. That's
and obviously, if you think he's God, it's slightly different.
No,
but
no,
we
wait, hang
don't
on.
believe he's
No,
God.
yeah.
Yeah.
You accept his rabbis, but not him.
yeah.
And also it's very inclusionary. Like what you described sounds so inclusionary. It's interesting.
But
because,
what I wanted to say to that was that although Jesus Christ did study under all those great rabbis, Jesus Christ said himself that Abraham.
Right? Or did you just see a very attractive person walking past?
Have you read the criterion before the Quran?
So
Probably. But we'll
Right.
come back. I'll do this something next.
all right, no, go on.
Oh, well, I was going to say, you described Judaism as effectively kind of like a soft affirmer of principles in the Old Testament, and then you won't even engage in what things come that make claims about it. And that's what I find interesting. Like, what I mean by that is I have a radically different position to you in the sense of I'm affirming things that you don't affirm, right? Now, usually how that normally works is like, are you a Muslim? I assume you're a Muslim, right? So I would affirm things he would reject. So what that usually means is I make my argument, he makes his argument. Yes. But with you, it kind of sounds like you would be like, well, actually, I'm just kind of glad that you're here and, you've said your thing.
Yeah, and it's also,
it's like,
and it's also
that's
like,
what I find so interesting, because
and
that's
it's
not
also,
usually
and it's also
the...
a state of, it's like saying, well, if it wasn't for us, you guys wouldn't be here.
So what I
It's
would
kind of like you're the old retired guy who's just like, I'm just happy, I'm done my
it's
thing.
like, yeah, we started this. So that means
obviously Jews
gave you the
Jews reject
yeah.
the Trinity. That's a given.
why?
Despite the fact that
Well, we can go there next. Very, very simple. But Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad.
Jesus said that, Yeshua said that, Yeshua
That's
quoted
because
that.
he was a good Jewish boy.
And he understood
What does
them.
that mean?
Chris,
Listen, Israel. Hashem is our God. Hashem is one.
Yeah, but Jesus said that, right? Mark 12:29, 28:29, and he also affirmed that yes, he is divine.
So,
But anyway, I'm not gonna.
but to come back to the affirming side of things, the overwhelming majority of Christians I know do very good deeds, and they base that on their religion. It's the same with Islam. Most Muslims I know, outside of the park they're all monsters, but most of the Muslims I know do incredible good deeds. They give sadaqah, they give to charity, they look after. And so my perspective of people that tend, if you go to any religious person's house, you'll see a bookshelf filled with books that are all about how to be a good person. And generally most of the Abrahamic faiths, they adhere to that. And because the God of the Jewish people, the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob is truly merciful, is a truly merciful God, it would be incredibly cruel to not reward those that devote their life to doing good. And so from a Jewish perspective, Olam Haba, Jannah, heaven, is not exclusively for the Jews. It's for all righteous people. You don't need to be Jewish to be rewarded by the Creator. You need to be a good person. That's the Jewish tradition. That's the Jewish teaching. And so I don't agree with... I don't think I'd agree with one of your interpretations of the Old Testament prophecies. I'm sure you could pose some questions that would
Well, if you
stump
agree
me
with
and I'd
one
have
of
to
them,
go.
it would be
But you could stump me and I'll say I don't have an answer to that. I'll go away, research, read what the rabbis say, come back next week and maybe have a good answer, maybe not. Maybe you'll get me one day, heaven forbid. But
What's the definition of righteousness? Just ask a quick question on that. What's the definition of righteousness?
righteousness.
Is it by action or by verbally?
Is it following the law of Moses?
So intention is very, very important in Judaism. You have to have intention behind your action, but at the end of the day, just doing the action is a reward in itself. So it says it's better to do. I don't know what piety means. So I'll give you an example. Let's say giving to charity. If you give to charity, and your intention is either for the sake of heaven or to help the person, that's great. If you give the charity so that you can have your name on the side of a hospital wing, that's the wrong intention. But it's still better that you did that, and the more of those actions will lead to more positive deeds.
So in the New Testament, it does say that charity out of a pure heart.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the
not
same
to do it
concept.
publicly, to do it
Yeah,
privately.
but I mean, all the Abrahamic faiths say the same. Because you've got your stuff from Jews.
Wait. What if there was a charity of which didn't give to those who were not part of the religion?
I
we
would.
What if there was a
we
particular
didn't-
thing called zakat
we
that
didn't
doesn't
get-
give money
we
to
didn't get anything
non-Muslims?
from
So I would say that's not a noble thing to do. But I would also say in Islam you have sadaqah. So you have zakat, which is for the Muslims,
Right.
and you have sadaqah, which can go to non-Muslims.
So we didn't.
So again,
So you
I try to be
fair
charitable with
play, fair
Christians.
play.
I try to be
I was
charitable with
doing a little
Muslims.
spicy there. You know,
The
just
difference
Okay,
with
so
Muslims,
we
yeah,
didn't
just
get
one
anything
second.
from Jews.
Just give me a second.
We
What
What do you mean you didn't get
Wait,
anything?
what?
You got your entire religion
No,
from us.
the-
Your
the-
top
the-
boy was one of us.
No, the God that we believe in is Jewish.
Yeah,
so we didn't get
funny.
anything from Jews.
What does Judaism say about usury?
It's a complete tangent. I'll come back to it, no, but definitely I'll give you an answer on that.
No, so what I'm saying is that the God that we believe in is Jewish. So we didn't get anything from him. He is Jewish.
Right, but all
The
the
God is
prophets you
Jewish,
said
did you say?
were
Sorry.
Jewish.
Yeah, the God that we believe in is Jewish.
The prophecy said were Jewish. You understand?
No, he said the God is Jewish.
No, the God that we believe in.
The God that you
Yeah,
believe
you're
in is
referring to
Jewish.
Yeshua.
Yeah, no, I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying. You hold
So we
Jews in
didn't-
such
we
esteem
didn't get anything
that
from
you
Jewish.
think we're
He is
gods.
Jewish. So he is Jewish. So if what we believe in is resounding to what you think is Judaism, then that's because he is Jewish.
So-
Right, but I'm not sure what you're getting at there. I understand the point, but
Just to tell
But
you one thing.
you're blocking the camera, by the way.
Just tell you one thing, like to be a Muslim is different from being a person that's a believer. So part of the six pillars of belief in Islam is
tempted to go and argue with him.
to worship
Well,
Allah,
we can do an argument. I'll go to usury as well. We'll just roll up our
to
sleeves
worship
and get
God
really.
and His angels and His books
Yeah.
and His messengers
Yeah.
and good
The six
and bad.
pillars of-
So it's a
of
constant war between
Iman.
you making your own plan as a human being and accepting God's plan. And that's the thing where humans generally fight for a war of existence and a war of recognition. And that's why religion, in any sense, comes under laws of communication. And that's why that's the main thing people should be talking about. And the people of Israel understand the real concept of religion and have used Christianity and Muslim to confuse the whole people and make them feel like that it's history
nobody's
and
confused.
contextual stuff.
Nobody's confused.
You have to understand things beyond just the pray or zakat or this.
Yeah, but nobody's
Right.
confused.
It's about,
No one's
it's about understanding
I'm confused
between
what you're saying.
how humans communicate, psychology,
Right.
how
Yeah,
people
but we're
communicate.
not-
So-
And the thing
so-
is, nowadays they've created a new religion through laws of empathy. And the thing is,
Are you a Sunni Muslim? Just wanna. You are a Sunni Muslim.
I'm a general person that's open
You step back
to.
so we're all in camera though,
Yeah,
otherwise it's just.
Yeah, but we're not.
I'll
We're
make
not
sure I
confused.
get
I feel like
I understand
I
what
grew
he's
my
trying
beard
to
this
say.
morning. I want it on camera.
Yeah, it's-
I understand what he's trying to say.
I feel like
But
generally
we're not
Muslims, what we lack
confused
is, we lack effective communication. And that's understanding people's understandings, respecting people's beliefs, and not understanding religion by context, but understanding it beyond the context of what's the objective of religion. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, he came only to perfect good character. So the character is the main thing we should be talking about. And religion is a constant war between believing in your eyes and believing in something you don't see. And generally, Islam, it gives you 5 daily prayers. That's the war of between your eyes and believing in God. So when you say Christianity is the most like adherent to religion or something,
No, most people who are religious are Christian.
okay.
That's
so,
general consensus. There's over 2
Well,
billion.
I mean, it's pretty hard to argue.
It's a
about that.
terrible argument though.
No,
in
it's
terms
not.
of-
It's not actually an argument. I'm not
By
trying to
action,
say
yeah.
it's
Say it's
true.
right, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
talking about the psychological
Okay.
effect of what that would mean.
generic-
Because
he's just making a generic
I
statement,
like
that's
that as a Christian. You understand?
Yeah.
Because it psychologically, it's like, hey, God's plan. I can see how that's working out. But as an Orthodox Jew, I think if you ever took the position of I want to argue against Christianity and Islam, then perhaps you would have to reckon with that.
So I
maybe.
understand.
I'm
No,
not
so
sure.
here, this is perfect. So, from a Jewish perspective, we believe that the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, the Tanakh, this was sent to the Jewish people and the Jewish people alone. It's a code of law only for the Jewish people. However, in the Messianic era, we believe the entire world will recognize the Creator. The entire world will recognize Hashem, Allah, God, as
The triune God?
not quite, but
the Holy Spirit.
will recognize the Creator. And we see the vehicle for that as Islam and Christianity. The 2 biggest religions in our world are our children. It's you guys. It's like you've spread our monotheism, you've spread our Creator to the 4 corners of the
Yeah.
world. And that is part of the divine plan. So when the Messiah finally comes and you realize it wasn't Jesus.
What, you mean the second coming?
Right.
But wouldn't that? What would that mean then, actually? When the Messiah does come according to your belief, are we in trouble?
So no, not at all, not at all.
So-
From our tradition, the entire world is
Right.
going to. The Jewish understanding
Actually,
is the
I see
world
point
will
you're trying to make.
recognise.
I see the
there's
point
a
he's trying to
creator.
make. Because if according to
No,
you
I
the
don't
Messiah
think so. I'm
hasn't
just
come,
wondering
right?
from Israel.
If according to you the Messiah hasn't come, right? Then our belief is made to none effect.
So
Right? So that means that
let me
when he
put it a
does
different
come,
way.
what does that mean?
So it's
for
very,
those
very
people
easy.
that-
We all read the Old Testament,
Right.
and we all know that one of the signs of the Messiah is that the third temple will be built in Jerusalem. It's one of the prophecies. We also know that it says the Jews will know the Torah on the heart. They'll know the 5
be
books of
written-
Moses
it'll
on
be
the heart.
written in their heart, yeah.
And like, test me. Ask me like what the Genesis 5:15. I don't know. Like, I'll have to open it up and read it, and even then, I'd need to read the Mefarshim to understand it. I don't, but if you came to the park one Sunday and they've built a temple in Jerusalem, I'm stood on a ladder and I'm just espousing to Hil. I'm speaking all of the words of the Torah, and actually all the armies have put down their weapons. And you look at the Old Testament and you see that the leader who's sitting in Jerusalem isn't Jesus; it's some other dude, David, whatever his name may be, and it's like maybe the Jews. No, but he'll come from the line of David.
Okay, right.
But then you're like, okay, maybe the Jews were right. They've rebuilt the temple. They now know the Torah. There's world peace.
But you wouldn't want that initially, because the Antichrist, when he does come, he will be sitting in the throne of God, claiming himself to be
So
God.
we don't have a concept of an antichrist.
But you will on that day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe he's going to believe that the Messiah that rebuilds the temple and does all these things and gives the Jews that. Like, if the Jews know the Torah on their heart, like, that's going to be divine. Yeah. Can we agree with that?
Sure, I'll agree with that. Just a quick question.
Well, it actually is written
Wait,
in the book.
so you believe the third temple is going to be built,
Physically
right?
be built,
Now, obviously,
yes.
there's already something there, which poses a slight problem.
Yeah.
So, what does that mean then? Do you think that
So-
supernaturally it will be removed and replaced?
So there's
Or-
three key schools of thought. One is probably the most adhered to. It's not what I hold, but because most Jews today are more on. I'm much more rational than most Jews. I follow my Maimonidean thought school of philosophy. But many Jews believe that the temple's literally going to ascend from heaven and land there fully constructed. I don't believe that, and many Jews like me don't believe that. What we believe is going to be physically. It's going to be
in the Book of Revelation. That is the new.
It's going
Jerusalem
it's going to be physically built, and one of the signs of who is the Messiah is he's going to be the leader of the Jewish people that's responsible for that building. Now, what do we do with the what's there at the moment? So the complex today by Muslims is called Haram al-Sharif, or the Al-Aqsa compound, and it's built on top of this the Temple of Solomon, which was then extended under Herod. So it's quite a big area. Now, where Masjid Al-Aqsa, which actually isn't a golden dome, it's a mosque to the corner. Where that stands, that's not the most sacred ground for us. It's very sacred for Muslims, and it's part of the complex, which is holy, but that's like the least important area for a Jew. The most important is where the Golden Dome is, which actually isn't a mosque, it's a shrine for Muslims.
Okay.
Now, today I see it as a place of monotheism. I don't believe many of the Christians in the park will tell you that Muslims aren't monotheist. I believe they are monotheist, they're very monotheist. I don't accept Muhammad as a prophet, obviously, otherwise I'd be a Muslim, but they believe in one God. And they've built a shrine to that one God on that spot. So I don't have an issue with that. There's two schools of thought. One is like there's enough space on that complex for everybody. The next is we don't know what's going to happen. There could be some crazy pagan cult that comes in and demolishes the mosque or the shrine, and on top of that we can build our temple. Who knows, other than the Creator, what the future lies in store. And the other side is actually there's no reason why there couldn't be a temple built on there. Anyone who's seen the complex knows there's an awful lot of space in between Qubba al-Sakra, Masjid al-Aqsa. It's a huge complex, and there's enough room for everybody. And actually, when we had a temple there was a gallery for the nations to come and pray. You did not need to be Jewish to pray on the Temple Mount.
What is the importance of the red heifer, and have you found it, and what is that?
It's just to do with sacrifice, and what does the Quran say about it? Because Muslims ask me this all the time. So why do you ask it? It's interesting that you ask.
I listen to loads of different prophecies of different, like eschatology in general, different religions. So I just wondered about the red heifer because I heard that.
So when it comes to the animals that we have to sacrifice, they have to be pure, they have to be of a certain caliber, but I don't know a particular red heifer, so you could ask my friend over there, he may know, he may give you a better answer than I do.
Excuse me, I'm new to the conversation. Can I just ask a question? So you are pro-Israel, right? You think this is the land of Jews, right?
Yeah, but we'll do that next. I come here to talk about Israel Palestine. That's my that's my passion. So happy to do that. They're talking religion at the moment, but monotheism. I'll come back to Israel Palestine and happily talk about that. But yes, absolutely, it's the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people. It's the only place we have any right to live
and Judaism
and to be sovereign.
What is the definition of one God?
I don't believe in
that there is no God beside him.
Okay, and do you think that implementing individualism is a way where you can accept there's one God if you're an individualistic person?
That's a good point.
Although
It's very hard to.
say
Very hard to.
otherwise, I became
The
a
Prophet
believer.
when he came,
Because Muslim means whoever believes in God,
My friend,
the
I like
one
the way
and
you're
only.
speaking, but
If you believe in God, the one and only, then you are Muslim as well.
So I'm a Muslim.
Then
So I
you
believe
should
in Allah.
mention it as
I
well.
believe La ilaha illallah.
anyone who believes in one God is a Muslim.
Yeah.
Right. So you know
If
that
you-
even
no,
the devil
one second,
knows
one
that
second.
there's one
If
God,
you
right?
believe in God, then
your
you
friends.
when you submit yourself to the will of God, the one and only, then you are Muslim.
It means you
don't know what you
submit
mean
your
by
will to God, so
individualism.
perhaps.
Okay, so it means you submit your will to God.
Yeah.
Are babies born Muslim?
Yes.
But how are they submitting their will to God?
Because they're not capable of knowing the differentiation between right or wrong, so they are underneath the protection of God. So like they are pure. They're automatically.
Right, but
It's called a fitra.
Right, that makes sense. But I mean, do they even know how many gods there are?
Yeah, they don't get held accountable for
I would
anything,
love
so
to do this with
they're-
Oh right, sure, I
they're
definitely get that. Right,
Yeah.
to be honest, well,
No, they don't.
how do you know they're worshipping one God?
Finish this
They're not
conversation
worshipping.
here.
Or sorry,
It's like
how do
a
you know they
category.
believe in one
On
God?
Israel and Palestine.
It's a category that
This
they're
is
in.
what I
It's
want to
like,
talk
for
about.
example, somebody who's
No, we're having a
mentally ill
conversation
is
about
not held
religion.
accountable
On
for
camera,
their
there's a
crimes.
camera filming the
So
conversation.
that's why
It seems a bit difficult to see. I don't know how someone could be born a Muslim.
I know we're not in Egypt. You're not going to be head us. It's not totally a square.
What their natural.
But I genuinely want to
But
talk
it means
to you.
more to be Muslim. I assume you're a Muslim lady.
I genuinely want to talk
So
to
as a
you.
Muslima, I assume that when you practice your deen,
We're in the
it's
middle
more
of a
than
conversation
just.
about
What
religion.
conversation?
It's more than just believing in one God.
It's a religious
It's more than
conversation.
telling
And
you.
I prefer talking
It's
politics.
religious because you believe religious and you say by religious.
That's what makes
You
you a
belong
Muslim.
there. That's what I'm
No,
talking
I
about.
didn't. I said,
Women is
By
different.
religion.
Lady, I really want to
So-
talk to you. Please stick around. Let us finish this conversation.
I thought a
and then
Muslim
I'll
was a
talk to you. I
believer.
promise.
We're talking about Jesus Christ at this minute.
Muslim is one who submits
So
his will to
this is
God.
what.
So am I a
I was
Muslim?
talking about.
You submit your will to God, and
Well, I'm
you
a
don't.
Christian.
Believe in God, the one and only.
Yes, I believe God. Yes.
Just like
stick
Will
around
you be able to
and
name, give an Alexis? Yeah.
just like the Unitarians.
Unitarians? No, I'm not a Unitarian.
The Unitarians, they believe in God. And they believe that Jesus is the messenger of God. So they are Muslim.
Okay. Well, am I a Muslim?
If you believe
I heard that there was one found in Texas, and I wanted to know what importance does it hold ritually to building the Temple of Solomon again.
in order to purify the most extreme form of impurity, and impurity is a very bad translation, but we'll use that word because we're speaking English. So you need this blood of the red heifer in order to perform this. So basically, without that, you can't rebuild the temple. You can't have any
So
other.
you have to have it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what. I'm not sure.
And there are people that are trying. Every now and again, someone thinks they found one. and it turns
You know, I
out-
get messages on the Israel advocacy movement from someone who's raising money to. He's always asking.
There's people that are trying to breed them. There's people that are trying to. People that think that they found one, and it often is.
Does it have to be
Who built
actually-
Jerusalem?
There we go.
King David.
David Amelech.
Arabs.
King David wasn't an Arab, you clown. And stop spitting on your sisters.
60 centuries before Jesus, yeah, Isa.
This
60, yeah.
This guy
Six-
is
60.
a Daeshi dog. Daeshi dog.
Why you be like this? I thought,
You literally came at me praising terrorists. I showed you a friend of mine whose children had been killed and his wife, and you smiled and laughed about that.
video, man. You didn't show me no video.
Like, literally, you stood there and I told you a friend of mine has just had his family murdered, my old rabbi, and you smiled.
There's a lot of people who look like
There's
me.
not many people that look like you, trust me.
No.
Do you have him on camera?
But who built Jerusalem? It's the Arab.
King David.
No, it's not King David, man. Who told you King David?
The Bible.
The
Bible is
the Bayat al-Maqdis was not built by Umar al-Khattab. Ken? Nachon? Yes. Umar al-Khattab, did he build Bayat al-Maqdis? Did he build the temple? No.
Can we get back to his criteria about the Messiah being?
Have you even read what it says on Kubad al-Sakra? It literally praises now.
So I'm telling you,
Jerusalem.
Anyway, with religion, I'll come and school you.
You're
later.
disturbing this
India
conversation.
has built most of this. Let's come India here and claim all this. Number one, this shit is curry.
This guy's a dog. Don't listen to him.
Here you go.
You came over saying you were going to. You're learning Hebrew so you could take Jewish sex slaves.
Yeah, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? But this is the war, isn't
You're
it?
like that.
You're the
What's
Ishi dog. You're an ISIS dog. Ya khalab, ya hammo, ya donkey. And
You know,
I
I understand your language.
He
You know
literally
that.
says he's going to enslave Jewish women so he can rape them.
Did I say that?
Yes.
No, I said I will marry them. I will marry
Didn't
them.
you just say
because
what's
there
wrong
will
with
be
that?
no men for them. So
Sabaya.
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 Yeah, we take them.
What's
yeah.
a sabaya? What's sabaya? Tell the camera. Tell the camera.
Sabaya basically.
It's a Jewish a female slave that you would capture in
no,
war.
not a slave, no, sir.
Prostitution, what's prostitution? And every time, and every
You're going to defend this dog? You're talking about enslaving women and the woman's defending him?
Every day.
Astaghfirullah! Astaghfirullah!
Listen. The reason I'm learning because I need to communicate with you. Because next year, inshallah, summertime, we're gonna conquer Jerusalem again, you know, and we're gonna take it.
We're here now. We're here now. You don't have to go to Jerusalem.
But
Do
I'm
it
giving
now.
you- I'm giving
Do
you-
it now.
No,
do it now.
We have to give.
Do it now.
Man, your problem is with the Polish.
Listen,
and with the German, not with the
Listen,
Arabs.
listen.
You have a revenge.
We normally give you
go
3
to
days.
Germany, man,
We
and
normally
take
give
your
you
rights
3
from
days.
there.
I give
Not
you
from us.
365 days. Oh man, man.
The Arabs have been very kind to the
I will-
Jewish
I
all
will-
through the history.
I will
you can't
even
go to Germany.
Order
Go and
an Uber
invade
taxi
Germany.
for you to get out.
You're not taking any Jewish
Uber
slaves.
taxi.
But who's going to take the Jewish slaves? You.
Is the
You're the
falafel-
one who's going to take
is-
Jewish
is-
slaves.
is-
Riding
is
over the
falafel
hill on your
Jewish food?
donkey.
Is falafel Jewish or Palestinian food?
Where it's from?
Falafel
food.
No, but is
What
it
do you
yours?
think the Jews that lived in the Middle East ate? Do you think they ate bagels? You think the Jews who lived in Egypt ate bagels? and not-
They used to eat bagels.
Chopped herring as well.
Yeah.
You're
What is that?
clown.
What's that? Never tried that.
Chopped herring.
Chopped herring.
Ask some of your Egyptian Jewish friends. Because apparently that's what they
Because you guys from Egypt anyway. Yeah?
Yemenites.
We're from Egypt now.
You never existed in Palestine anyway.
We never existed. Dawood never existed in Palestine.
Dawood existed in
Suleiman
Sinai.
never existed in
Sina.
Sorry, mate. What's your point in this? What's this? Is this just
The
The point is-
emotion. He's an ISIS dog. He's talking about taking Jewish women captive so he can rape them.
No. If we get married to them, it's not rape, man.
Sabaya is a slave. Sabaya is a slave.
No, I think you are twisting.
Sabaya.
You are twisting.
Sabaya is slave.
things, you know, because that.
You
is-
think I'm
that
an
is-
idiot? I'm not an idiot. What are the ISIS markers? What do they call
You're
the
not
women?
idiot.
What do
I
they
know
call
you're
the
not.
women?
I know you're in it.
What do they call the women in these ISIS slave markets? What do they call the women? They use exactly the same language as you.
But I've never been.
You're a clown.
I've never been there.
You're an extremist.
Why is extremist?
You're Khawarij.
So just one question to you, yeah. Do you think, as a white man with blue eyes, that you belong to the Middle East by ethnicity?
That guy will get skin cancer. He will get skin cancer if he goes to
He
Palestine.
doesn't belong here. This man belongs to the Arab. Come here with a visa, spend 5 years, and then he's British. We come through a pathway. If you want to
Do you
be,
think most
if you
people
like
look
the
like
weather,
me?
if you like the weather and the temples there, come to the Palestine, take visa, stay here, be Palestinian, because you are white man. You don't belong to the
Let me show
Middle
you
East.
somebody.
No, they do. They do believe. They do believe.
They don't,
to
but
the-
if they
the
have,
Irish.
if they white, they don't belong.
Actually, the Irish.
For the camera. This is my uncle. Does he belong there?
Yeah. No.
He doesn't belong there
We can do a
either.
DNA test. Here you go.
So
DNA
this-
test.
for
Let's
everyone
check
who
the
can see
size.
this,
Let's
this
check
is
the
not
size.
my uncle.
If we do
This is
a DNA test,
Al
if
Yaqubi,
we do
a direct descendant of Muhammad. A direct descendant of Muhammad.
a DNA ancestry test, and your grandparents are coming not from Poland, not from Germany,
Actually,
from
the
Middle
Irish-
East. You have
the
a point.
Irish, they come
This
from Syria,
DNA
you know
is
that.
a science.
You know that the Irish, they come from Syria. These people, they come from the Middle East. It's not that about.
liar is not Jewish.
It's not Jewish.
He's a Zionist. You like Netanyahu, yeah?
We are
He's a war
Egyptians.
criminal,
We come here, we don't belong to this land, but we come here,
You're
we want
literally
to
an
live here,
ISIS
but
supporter
by a
talking
pathway
about
legally.
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the dog is dead. And we celebrate, we dance on the grave of your...
Yeah, let's do a DNA test. If the DNA test prove he belongs to
Make
Islam, he's
takfir on
taken.
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi.
I'm not a mufti.
Tell us he's not a Muslim.
I'm not a mufti. I'm telling you, I'm not a
Condemn
mufti.
him. Condemn him. Condemn Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Call him a butcher. Call him a dog.
I don't know him.
You don't. This is an ISIS supporter. Know who this man is. Know who this man is. He won't even condemn the dead dog of ISIS.
Never met him. Never met him.
Never met him. It's ISIS.
I never met him. But who created
I'm
ISIS?
sure he's a lovely
Who
guy.
created ISIS? But who created ISIS? Or the condition for ISIS to come? You guys. You guys.
You won't even condemn him. You're so
What does it get
insincere.
US dollars then?
You
nothing.
created the condition for people to become like this.
Are any Muslims here willing to condemn Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi the dog?
I'm not a mufti, man.
There you go. Thank you.
Muslims are not supposed to say bad things to any dead people.
ISIS.
Okay?
You're not allowed to say bad things about ISIS.
Not at all.
You won't say bad things about ISIS.
You're not allowed to say bad things about ISIS. Throughout the history,
Listen, we don't know him, so we can't
Netanyahu is
talk
an
about
evil
him.
people.
We
Is
don't
evil
know him.
person.
There was
Sharon
Christian.
is an evil
sir.
person.
There was Christian.
Ben-Gurion.
There was Christian.
Ben-Gurion, you know what happened to
There was
his...
Christian
yes,
Pope
yes.
who used to molest and rape children in the US is documented through the age of extremists in every religion.
Ben-Gurion, what happened to his daughter?
Doesn't give you
in
the right to
1948?
stay in Palestine.
Tell
You
us.
don't belong there.
What happened to his daughter?
I genuinely don't know.
She
so I'm
got
asking.
killed in a battlefield.
She got killed in
Guess who was the leader of that troop who fought against the Zionist? He's from Iraq, from Babylon. What happened to your flags lately? Yeah, they're getting picked by crows. Al-Khurab.
This is the level of that.
Listen.
They've invaded us 5 times. They've been destroyed 5 times. They've been destroyed every time. And he's come at us and saying there's a crow pecking at the Israeli flag. Literally, we crushed your armies and you're still crying. And you're talking about a crow.
The Golan
That's
Heights.
your victory. The victory of the Islamists is a crow pecked at an Israeli flag.
Yeah.
I wasn't with the Islamists.
He don't hate. No.
Listen.
He don't believe in Jesus.
You bought the Golan Heights because you paid Assad $50 million just to give you that. You did not fight the Golan.
Yeah, wait, there was no war.
No, there was no war. You took it. You paid him. And I'll tell you something, yeah, the Czech, the Egyptian. No, it did not bounce. It did not bounce. No, it did not bounce. Otherwise, you bought the Golan Heights. You did not fight, yeah?
You're a nicest
You
dog.
guys cannot fight. You know that. You cannot
That's
fight.
why we've crushed
Remember.
every one of your armies, and you're still crying.
What happened
Every
to
single
Ben-Gurion?
Muslim state wants to destroy
Ben-Gurion's daughter,
Israel.
what happened to her daughter?
Every single Muslim state surrounding us
Can't do
wants to
anything
destroy
to
us.
German. That's why
tried to
we're.
invade Egypt and we kicked you out.
Egypt, we took the Sinai from you. We took the Sinai. And we gave it back for
We took
peace.
it back. We took it back. We took it back. What are you talking about?
And
Sinai is Egyptian.
the victories that they're claiming, these are their victories. That they came to us begging for peace, and we returned land for peace. That's their victory. Every single Muslim in this park, without fail, almost every single Muslim wants to destroy Israel. Yet some, because they
occupy our land, man.
Listen, Israel is our land. We won't destroy Israel is our land. We won't destroy it. We will take
You're
it back.
an Egyptian.
We will take it back. Not destroy it. It's our land. We love it. We will take it back.
It's your land. That's the Egyptian.
A white man doesn't belong there.
Arafat doesn't belong there. Arafat was from your country.
Blue eyes.
Arafat was from
Blue eyes.
Cairo.
Go to Germany back. Go back to
Go to
Germany.
Germany. There we go. There we go. Look how positive.
Go back to Polish. You what? Your eyes are saying I'm not
Anti-Semitic
from
dogs.
here.
Every morning I wake up and
Palestinian than you. It's my skin.
every morning I wake up and I say, Alhamdulillah, we don't live under their boot anymore.
Why?
No, because we don't have to pay the jizya till the Zaghi rules.
Go back to
You know,
Poland.
Dennis,
Go back to
Pay
Germany. Go back to the
Pay the
US.
20% tax then, yeah?
Go Good luck.
No problem.
Good luck.
It was a lot more than 20%. Under Muhammad, it was 50%.
Yes, it was.
He's saying 40%
Under Muhammad, the Jews had to give 50% of their produce. Sahih Muslim, Bukhari, they all give the same hadith.
That's if he's paying.
He's paying in UK 40% taxes.
Did the Quran say that
What are you talking about?
The Jews
before 1948?
Before 1948, did the Quran say the Jews were apes and pigs?
Yes.
It definitely says that in the Quran.
So why does the Quran call the Jews apes and pigs before 1948?
You Muslim, I'm Muslim. It doesn't exist. We love Christians. We love Jews.
He slaughtered them. This Christian, he slaughtered the Jewish. And look at them.
I am Jewish, you a monkey.
Yes. A monkey. Look at that. Look at that. Yes. This is anti-Semitic, man. Calling me monkey.
Wait. ISIS guy says he's anti-Semitic.
You're a kafir.
No.
ISIS man said it's anti-Semitic.
No, we don't say this. No, it doesn't exist. Show it to me in Quran. Give me evidence. Evidence. I need evidence.
There's Quran verses.
Don't need evidence. Is there Talmud? There is evidence there. It says yes or no? Yes or no?
Read that book.
I memorize it.
Read that book.
We don't read that rubbish.
Acknowledge that even I can eat kosher. Kosher is the same thing like halal. How come?
Yes, the
It's the same rules.
There's the evidence.
It's the same rules.
No, exactly the same.
No, but
No, there are differences there, aren't there?
We can eat their food.
we don't have
We can eat their
problem
food.
with Jews. Before 48, Muslims and Jews were living together. I like Jews to live there as Palestinian with visa. And
But
be
wait, wait.
Palestinian if you want.
Wait,
but be
Muslims are
Palestinian.
instructed to make Christians and Jews dhimmis if they refuse Islam. You know that?
That's
That's right.
He knows.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
ISIS guy knows. Like, seriously, this is a
What's
real
your
thing.
ISIS man?
you
My
said
name is
that. You said that
my
too.
name is Candyman, man. What's wrong with you, man?
I don't know if you're trolling or I don't know what's up with this guy. But the point is, it really is in the Quran that there is instruction to do that. Surah 9:29.
Yeah, you're a sensible man. Can I just
Surah
lower my voice
9:29,
and
he
talk?
knows
Yeah.
everything about God.
I can lower my voice and
Okay,
talk.
that's
Yeah,
fine, yeah.
okay, I don't want to scream at him. So in Egypt, the rules are that every Egyptian man doesn't need to go to the army, and some doesn't go to the army. If you are an only boy in a family, don't go to the army. And many of my friends are very happy because not everyone wants to serve to the army. And I know people who are looking forward to not serve in the army because they don't want to live like this. So if you're telling me that in Palestine, Muslims, Christians, and Jews are living together, and we're telling that two can't go to the army, well and good, what's the problem? Do you want to live? Do you want to serve in the
I
army?
don't see that's relevant to what we talked about.
They
I
talk
just
about
said that.
army
Wait.
service.
I'm saying that
Is
Muslims
yeah?
make Christians and Jews Dunis. Dunis?
Dhimmi.
There you go. Dhimmis, not Dunis. Dhimmi is a lower status.
So
where
we were
you
having
pay
a
the
nice
jizya
conversation,
tax. If you don't
and
pay
then
the tax,
the
you die.
Before 1948 in Palestine.
No, you get killed.
Christians and Muslims were having a lovely conversation, and then the jihadis turned up.
But before 1948, before the Jewish come to Israel, this was not the case. Jews were living there. They were very much welcome. They come as a refugee from Europe, and there was
They were
documentary.
slaughtered. They were slaughtered. 1929 by the Palestinians. By the Palestinians. 1517, 1929, 1929. Time after time, you were slaughtered. You watched. In your country, they brainwash you. They were taking their babies and smashing them off walls. 1929, Hebron massacre.